This is the Real Grand Podcast. Welcome home. So we're back, guys. We're spending the evening today here with Jennifer Wilson, owner of Wild August Flowers out here in Harlingen. It's a flower farm. She's a florist, also a flower market and a venue, as we just discovered out here in South Harlingen. Nice to meet you, Miss Jennifer. It's
nice to be here. Nice to meet you guys.
we were already having a good time and we're just getting started. So we found you on Instagram looking at just businesses in the Valley, and I think what caught my attention was the idea of a flower farm. That was new, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess we could say, especially for the Valley, you
Right?
know? I think I've heard of them in other parts of the state, but when I looked at the address and I was like, that says Harlingen, Texas, a flower farm, and we were like, okay. So I showed Allie, and she was immediately she wanted to call you right away, right? And we're talking like 10 p.m. So we kind of had to put the brake on that one. But so tell us a little bit about yourself, Miss Jennifer. Give us a little bit of a background. Just tell us about you.
Well, background is I grew up here in the Valley, spent my whole life here, and then went away to college in Abilene for several years. And I just loved horticulture. I didn't know it well enough to clarify it that specifically, even in college. But my undergraduate degree is environmental science. That is as close to horticulture as I could get at Abilene Christian. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it, but I knew that I loved plants. And so finished my undergraduate degree, and then I did a year of graduate work at Texas A&M in landscape architecture, and I hated it. I just kept waiting for us to get to the part about the plants. And it was way more architecture than landscape per se. And so I had decided I wanted to switch my degree, and I wanted a master's in horticulture. And I was all set to do that. And then my life kind of took a left turn, and my cousin died very unexpectedly, and I dropped everything and I moved to Austin, and I lived with his mother, who's my aunt, for 6 months. And then it was just sort of like, there's that phrase in the movie Titanic where Rose says, the inertia of my life. And that still resonates with me because I was 23. I was engaged. I had a degree. I was making like minimum wage selling pansies at a high-end nursery in Austin. I just felt like I needed to get on with my life, and I needed to be a grown-up, and I had no idea what I was doing or what I even really wanted to do. And so every woman in my family is a teacher. And so I knew how to be a teacher. I knew I would be a good teacher. And I knew that no matter what was going on in the world, I could be a teacher. And so I went back and finished my master's in education. And I taught school for 15 years here in the Valley. My husband and I moved back to Harlingen in the end of 2001. And so I started teaching here at a public school in Harlingen in 2002, and I taught until I left in 2016 to start the flower farm, or to continue the flower farm. It had already sort of started in its own right by that point.
Tell us about the name, because when we were looking at the account, we were thinking Wild August, huh? So we were trying to make a connection to maybe flowers, but we couldn't really figure that out. So tell us about where did the name come from?
So way back, and sometimes it still shows up on Google, we were Lucy's Garden, because my husband and I had a pug named Lucy. She was a little black pug, and we were like, oh, that's so cute, Lucy's Garden. People would call often and ask to talk to Lucy, which was really annoying, but also dead giveaway that they were spam calls, right? But at some point, after before 2011, I suppose, I decided to name it after my two older sons. August is my firstborn, and then Wilder is his younger brother. So Wild August came from their two names. And then at the very end of 2011, we got this wonderful little Christmas surprise named Eli. So he may be running the company someday, but the business is named for his two older brothers. But,
wow.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful choice there, because It actually goes really well.
Yeah, it does. When I told my mom and my sister that I was going to change the name from Lucy's Garden to Wild August, my mom was like, "People won't know what you do, though. Like, it's kind of vague." And I said, "Maybe, but I love it." So, and I think it fits very well. So
Good.
yeah.
As long as Lucy didn't get too
Right.
upset. Right?
No, she was fine with it.
Yeah, we were browsing through your website and we saw that what it looked like was that this was almost like a side gig while you were teaching.
It was. So during my stint at A&M, that year that I was there, for just a few months, I got to work at the Antique Rose Emporium, which is right outside of Brenham. It's about a 40-minute drive from Texas A&M, but I loved that job. It's an heirloom rose nursery, and I mean, I just couldn't believe that anybody would pay me to work with plants, and especially heirloom roses. And it just captured my whole heart. I was so fascinated. And so, when we moved back to the Valley, my husband had a lawn care company, and I was doing this deep dive into landscaping with native plants here in the Rio Grande Valley, just for my own interest. And he had a lot of his his lawn care customers were asking about landscaping and stuff. And he said, "You should put a little catalog together of native plants that work well in the Valley." And I could hand it out to my customers. So I was like, that's a good idea. But my caveat was I wanted to include heirloom roses in it because I knew they could do well down here. And so I called up Mike Shoup, who was my former boss at the Rose Emporium. And I said, "Would you help me put a list of roses together for the Rio Grande Valley?" And he said, "Sure." And so for probably 10 years, we just had this little side business of doing heirloom roses in pots as plants. And we would be open on like the weekends or, by like when our kids weren't busy, because at that point we had children. And so it was very much this quiet, teeny tiny little side hustle, but I loved it. And my 14th year of teaching, I had decided I really wanted to find my way back to horticulture. I always felt like leaving A&M the way that I did and not getting that master's in horticulture always felt like unfinished business to me. And I was just desperate to find my way back to what I really, really loved. I was afraid to leave teaching. It was my safe harbor, and I loved and cherished to this day the relationships that I had through teaching with the kids and my fellow teachers and the staff and my parents. I loved that. And I was really afraid to leave. But I felt like it would be a safe segue if I started making bouquets with the roses. So our house is on 15 acres. And so part of that acreage had been devoted to planting these heirloom roses in the ground so we could show people what they would look like in the ground after 5 years. You see it in a 2-gallon pot and it's just this little plant. It's hard to imagine that plant could be 10 feet wide in 10 feet in every direction in 5 years. So we had plants in the ground to demonstrate that in demonstration gardens and to show people how to use them and what they look like when they're fully grown and what the flowers look like and all those things. And so I said to my husband, "I have this great idea. I think I might want to leave teaching soon. So I'm going to start making bouquets with the roses that we have on the property in all the demonstration gardens." At the time, we had probably 200 roses representing about 50 different varieties on the property. And so I said, "I'm going to make bouquets with the roses, and I'm going to take them to the farmer's market here in Harlingen, and I'm going to sell the bouquets." And I think my exact words were, "It's going to be like a beautiful business card for the nursery. And then people will see the roses and the bouquets and they'll want to come buy the plants." And I think we sold 2 plants. Like nobody wanted to grow their own roses. And so, but I started getting these calls from people asking me to make more bouquets. Like, "I saw you at the farmer's market. Can you make me one of those bouquets for Tuesday for my girlfriend? Or we're having a family reunion. Can you make me 20 of those bouquets to go on the tables?" And it just started to take on its own momentum. And I remember feeling very insecure that if people only knew, I mean, the imposter syndrome was real. I didn't even know what imposter syndrome was at that point, but I kept thinking, if they only knew that this is like wild corydalus that I found growing in the hayfield and some fern from my front flower bed, and the hackberry looks really pretty, and when it comes out in early spring, so there's some hackberry in there. And like, if they only knew it's not quote unquote real, and I'm not a florist, it's just stuff that I found around the property that I think looks pretty with the roses. I now know that was the charm, that was the allure, was that it was so different, and it did quite unintentionally celebrate its place, like where we live. And it was seasonal and local and foraged and all of those things that I didn't even realize were trending at the time. And so people started asking for more of those things. And I guess maybe a year in, I thought, what if I planted some of that stuff on purpose? Like, what if we did more than just roses? And so I planted some ranunculus, and I'd grown them before, but I'd never grown them here, and I'd never grown them as a crop. And I wasn't even sure they would work. But we dug this little flower bed like across our driveway, like in our hayfield, and planted those ranunculus. And that spring we had armloads of them. I mean, it was probably the best crop we've ever grown. Like, we plant thousands of them every year now, but that first year was probably the best crop we've ever had. They were gorgeous. And I had no idea that people even knew what they were, but apparently there's a whole crowd of people out there whose favorite flower is ranunculus. And we tried to sell them to local florists, and nobody would buy them. And the local florists, the feedback we got was they don't last. They have a terrible vase life. And we were just shocked, because for us, they were lasting 3 weeks. I mean, they had an incredible vase life. I now know if you buy them off the wholesale market and they're shipped in, they do have a lousy vase life, and they're very fragile, and they often arrive with, fungal issues, and they're slimy and their little heads snap off. But we were growing them right here, literally in the front yard. And so they were amazing, but nobody wanted them. And I wasn't sure what to do with them. And so I put this post up on my Facebook page, and I said, like, would anybody like to buy? And I was terrified. I was so nervous. This felt different. I mean, I had been doing the bouquets at the farmer's market with the roses. Somehow this felt really intentional, and I felt really vulnerable. Like, I was doing this on purpose. I was trying to sell flowers that I had intentionally grown to be cut flowers to people. And it felt like a huge risk. And so I put the post up, and I said, I've got these bouquets. We have lots of ranunculus. If anybody would like some, please comment below. And I remember hitting post and saying to my husband, what if nobody likes them? What if people think they're hokey? What if people think they're too expensive? I mean, I was so nervous. And within 20 minutes, we had sold all of them. And then there was a wait list. And that was my moment. That was like the aha moment when I thought, oh my goodness, this could work. Like, this could work. And I think that was the first time that the idea actually crystallized in my head that it could be a flower farm. Like, all this time, it had been sort of an accidental gathering of whatever just happened to be in season, like wild or cultivated, or in my front yard, or in the hayfield, or in the brush line across the front of the property, but this was a very intentional effort to grow cut flowers on purpose. And that was the moment that I thought, oh my goodness, we could do this. We have the space to do it. We have the land to do it. We have the know-how. My husband's degree is in agronomy. I have this intense background in horticulture. And so that was it. And we just let it, we just took it from there. And yeah. And here we are.
Yeah. Wow.
That was in 2016, I guess. And so, when I started getting those messages back and the wait list started to grow, people wanting those bouquets, I would come home at the end of a school day and go out and make bouquets. And we'd work till dark with flashlights between our knees and cutting flowers until the kids, after the kids were in bed, I guess. And then the next day, my husband would deliver them for me on his landscaping route, and I would go teach school. And so by the end of that school year, the flowers had really taken off. Like they were just had this life of their own. And I remember my principal saying, and I was having a really difficult year. That was a hard, there was a lot going on in my life at that point. And I just remember feeling like I couldn't keep up with all of it. And felt like I was letting people down every day. And my principal said, you have to make a choice, Jennifer. You can't keep doing flowers all night long and school all day long and being a mother and being a wife. And it's okay to step away from this. And I was so afraid because, like I said, teaching had been my safe space for so long. I'd been doing it for 15 years. And I remember she said to me, it is so obvious. This is what you love. And it is so obvious that God is leading you in this direction. Why are you so afraid to try? And I remember saying, because for the first time in my life, he's telling me exactly what I want to hear. And how do I know this is God's voice and not mine? And she said, well, if it's not, you can always come back. But you have to try. And it was at her leading, I think, that gave me the courage to, I always say, like, I felt like I jumped off a cliff. I really did. But she gave me the courage to do it. And so I did not renew my contract for the 16-17 school year. And like I said, there wasn't a plan. I just felt like I needed to follow her advice, and I just needed to see where the Lord leads, as my friend Sarah would say, like, I don't know where this is going, but like there's got to be some value in finding out. And here we are.
And you haven't looked back.
Haven't looked back.
Wow. That's amazing. That wasn't even, you weren't transitioning then into doing this full time. It just worked out that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, so I left teaching. And at the time, what I was earning in the flowers, like the side hustle that I was doing at night when my kids were in bed, that year, that spring, it was already outpacing my teacher salary, which if you know and live a teacher, that's not hard to do, right? Teachers are highly underpaid. And that's not a dig on my school, on my little school. I loved that. And then it was worth every penny to be there. And I don't resent that, but it was not hard. And that was maybe another blessing in disguise. It wasn't like I was raking in. It's not like I had this huge paycheck that I had to risk losing. I was already making more doing the flowers than I was teaching school. But then it stopped. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, like I didn't sign my contract and everything is ended. It's like nobody was calling for flowers. By the second year, I was like, okay, that's how this works. It's very seasonal. And thank God, the hottest, most difficult part of the year for us here in the Valley is also the slowest season for flowers. And so by year 2, I was like, okay, this is fine. This is normal. It comes back again. When the weather cools off, we'll be crazy busy. And I will be burning the candle at both ends. So it's July. We're going to go sit on the beach under an umbrella and read seed catalogs and plan for the year ahead. And it's going to be okay. And it was, and it is.
So that teacher schedule really prepared you for the seasonality then, huh?
It did.
Because you already had the summer vacation. You were already used to working several months throughout the year.
And it was a gift too, because my kids were out of school. So the busiest time of year for us is February, March, April, May. It's just intense. It's madness in a good way. But I'm just not available for, a lot of things during those months. But then my kids get out of school, their year ends, and my year slows way down. So I've got time to, go to the beach and fix lunches and, watch TV with them, whatever. It slows down a lot. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you made the leap from teaching to the flower farming.
Jumped off the cliff.
Tell us a little bit about flower farming specifically, because I mean, a lot of us in the community, we have our flower beds, right? Our little gardens. But one of the things that caught my attention was you mentioned flowers as a crop.
Yeah.
And that might be a new concept to a lot of us because we don't think of it that way. Talk a little bit about flower farming and what makes it different and special. Like I said, from just planting some flowers in the garden, I assume there's a lot more work to it. You got your rows and everything. Tell us about flower farming.
Yep. So it's bigger than a garden, but it's smaller than. So actually, I had to call the extension station here a few years ago for a fungal issue I was having, and I wanted to have them tested. This plant, I was losing lots of plants to what I assumed was a fungus, but I couldn't identify which one it was. And I was trying to send it into the lab. And somebody there at the extension station was like, well, we deal with row crops. And I was like, well, it is a row crop, but it's snapdragons, and so it kind of lands in between the two. So there is some overlap, but so it's different than a garden. It's different than your front flower beds, but it's a much smaller scale than conventional agriculture. I mean, our whole facility, we're on half an acre. That's all we grow. And that reduces by half in the summertime. So in the summer, we're only growing on a quarter of an acre. In the peak season months, the full half acre is just busting. I mean, every row is packed. But yes, we grow them. We grow specific varieties that are grown as cut flowers because they have a longer stem or a bigger flower, different qualities that lend themselves to being a cut flower. And we grow them in rows, and they require a lot. It's a much more intensive process than just what you would plant like annual color in your front flower bed. So a lot of the things have to be netted to keep, protect them from wind blowing them over and knocking them down. Some things have to be tented with shade cloth, certain times of the year because it's too hot. Especially down here because we have such extreme seasons, not winter, but our summers are so extreme and our springs are so short.
Yeah.
And so, we grow quite a few things that are fine in the winter months, but then once it starts to warm up in the spring, if that crop is still in season for us, we'll have to cover it to protect it and to keep it cool a little bit longer and extend the season. So yeah, it's very different from both of those things. It's very much a unique skill set and knowledge base. And in fact, there's another, after I'd been doing it a few years, one of the farmers market managers introduced me to, because we were still going to the Harlingen Farmers Market at that time. And the market manager here introduced me to a lady, and she said, this is Audra Songer, and she's interested in growing cut flowers in the Rio Grande Valley too. She wants to start a flower farm. And I thought you should meet. And I was like, oh, okay. And we introduced ourselves to each other and had a quick little conversation, but it was busy. It was a market day and not a lot of time to visit. And so I gave her my card and she said, I'll call you later. And after she walked away, my husband said, are you going to talk to her? Are you really going to tell her all you know? Are you really going to? And I said, yeah, heck yeah, because it's such a unique job, and there's so much to know. And I said to him, and it's not that easy. A lot of people, it's gotten really, flower farming has exploded in the United States in the last several years. I mean, absolutely blown up. Everybody wants to be a flower farmer. And there's Magnolia Network has a show about flower farm in the Pacific Northwest. And there's lots of flower farms on Instagram, and it looks so lovely. And it is. I mean, there's a definite romance to growing flowers as a crop, of course, but it's not as simple as buying a packet of seeds and, throwing them out on the ground. There's a lot of work and a lot of knowledge and a lot of infrastructure that goes into doing it at this level. And so when I met her, he was like, are you really she would be your competition. I was like, I don't want her to be my competition. I want her to be my friend because there's so much to know. And if she's that serious about it, we need to be on each other's team. And she was that serious about it. And she is growing. She's also growing flowers in San Benito. And we share a lot of information and because there's no one else to talk to. It's like cotton farmers, there's so many people you could bounce ideas off of. And the extension station down here is, there's so many experts in the field, but you know, and flowers in the Rio Grande Valley, I belong to a group of Texas growers, where we trade ideas and information and things like that. But I'm even so different from the rest of them because our nights are warmer and we're so humid and our summers are longer. And there's definitely this little niche of, like information that's so unique to just the Rio Grande Valley. Yeah, it's definitely different. I've learned a lot.
That's great. That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
We
And
learn
there's
as
still
we go.
so much to know. I mean, there's still so much to learn, which to me is part of the thrill of it. I'm glad there's so much still to figure out and discover. That's part of what makes it interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah. And so as we're looking around, we see some arrangements here. Are all the flowers that you sell, are they all from your farm? This is all from your...
The vast majority of them are. We do source, so during the summer months, we source peonies because peonies are such a popular flower. But we can't grow them here. It's too hot. And so we buy them in from other flower farms around the country. And so that's another, we've sort of accidentally become known as a place to buy peonies by the stem. And so during the summer, that's a really popular crop for us, even though we don't grow it here. And then if someone has a special request, like I told you, it's all been a sort of accidental and very organic. There was no game plan. Like when I left teaching, I didn't imagine I would be a florist. And for a long time, I was even reluctant to call myself one because, again, it felt like an imposter thing. But and I said I would never do weddings. And yeah, that didn't last very long. Now I love to do weddings. And so if I have a bride that requests something specific, like recently I had a bride and she said, I love white hydrangeas. Well, we can't grow those either. But I do have some really good relationships with different wholesalers. And so if someone has a request for something that I don't grow, I will order it in. But the vast majority of what goes out into the world is grown right here at Wild August.
Wow. So for all those wedding planners out there, all the engaged girls that are planning their wedding, you know where to find some arrangements here at Wild August.
And one of my favorite things to do with brides, and this is something else that sort of happened by accident. I had a bride that called me up one day and she said, I'm doing a destination wedding, but I've got my portraits tomorrow. Can I come out and will you help me make a bouquet for my portraits? And I said, sure. I mean, yeah, come on over. And so we walked, because it was so last minute, she came out one evening and we walked through the flower field and cut her bouquet right there in the field. Like she walked through and she was like, oh, that's pretty. And I like that one over there. And can you cut me some of those? And so she was like literally shopping for her, like the flowers that would go in her bouquet right there in the flower field. And by the time we walked out of the field, she had her bouquet assembled and we tied a ribbon around it. And that was what was in her pictures. And so now if the weather lends itself to that, and the flowers that are in season are flowers that the bride likes, I love to do that with brides. Like, yeah, come on out. Let's walk through the field. Give me like 2 weeks ahead of your ceremony. Plan to come out and we'll walk through and see what you like and what you think is pretty. And I make them a little miniature version of their bouquet. And then when it's time to make the actual bouquet, I've got a much better idea of what she likes. And she's got this fun little souvenir from the flower farm of her bouquet.
That's awesome. And you've had some weddings out here, huh?
Yes.
Is that what we were talking about earlier?
Yes. Yep. So way back before it really actually was born, when it was just the Heirloom Rose Nursery, people would come out and say, oh, do you do weddings out here? Like, can I get married out here? And I always said no, because we just didn't have the facilities for it. And so once the flower farm started in earnest, and we got some infrastructure in place, then I started saying yes to the weddings, and that's become its own sort of thing too. So yes, we've had lots of weddings on the flower farm too, which is really fun.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, on top of that, you also host a market.
Yes.
As we were talking about also.
Also
Tell us
not
about
part
that.
of the plan.
How did that come to be?
That came to be because, so for the first couple of years, I guess that we were doing the flowers, I was taking them to the Harlingen Farmers Market every weekend. And our boys, we have 3 sons, and they were little at the time. And so they got really tired of having to go to the markets. And we were realizing too, it was hard on the flowers. They're so sensitive, especially when it's hot. And it was a lot of work to load up all those buckets of all those flowers and load up the kids and load up the market table and pull a trailer and all of those things. And so we decided, you know what, let's start offering them on Friday nights. We could drive the tractor up to the road. Because we live in a very residential, it was very rural, very agriculture based when I was growing up out here, but now it's become very developed. There's lots of houses around us. It's a very residential area. And so I had said, and our house in the flower field is set way back off the road, so you can't really see it from the road. And so I said to my husband, let's put the flower buckets in the tractor bucket and drive the tractor up to the road and just park it at the end of the driveway. On Friday afternoons, as everybody's coming home, we've already got market flowers loaded and ready to go to the market the next day. But let's see if we can sell some of those flowers on Friday afternoon as people are coming home from work. And one thing led to another. And then we thought, you know what? We have the space here on the flower farm. What if we just hosted a market here? What if we just sold our flowers directly and invited the public to come out and buy them directly here off the flower farm? And so we did. That was, how long ago was that? I think that was 2017, maybe?
It's a blur now, right?
Yeah, I think this is year 6. I think it was in the fall of 2017, we decided to formalize that. And so, we decided, well, if we're doing it, if we're going to go ahead and be available on Saturday mornings to sell flowers to the public, then let's invite other vendors to come too, because the Harlingen market was in the afternoons. And it's on the other side of town too. So I didn't want to step on Harlingen market toes because those people mean a lot to me too. That's where we got started. But I felt like, we're on the opposite side of town. We're in West Harlingen. And even if it just serves our little neighborhood and people just come for the flowers, that's worth it. Let's see what happens. And so I remember we put out a post on Facebook and just asked the public and asked our Facebook followers, would you be interested in a flower market here at the flower farm on Saturday mornings? And would you be interested in coming as a customer or as a vendor? And there was a comment, and actually just showed up again. Someone had replied to it or responded to it or something last week, 6 years later almost. And so it showed up on my notifications and I was reading back through it, and a lady had commented and said, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find vendors that want to come. But if you do, good luck. Sounds kind of cool. And now we have in the summertime, we have almost 40 vendors here. Wow. So it's definitely found its spot, that it went well. It's going well. But it's originally started as just a flower market. Yeah. Back in, I think it was 17. So I think this is our 6th year of doing the market.
Wow. Okay.
And then it's just kind of evolved into it's taken on a life of its own.
So when can we find this market? Is it Friday nights?
Yep. In the summertime, it's on Friday nights from 6 to 9. And we have live music and food trucks and about 40 vendors here between 30 and 40 any given weekend. And we do it on Friday evenings just because it's so hot in the summertime. On Saturday mornings, the humidity's sky high. And so it feels like a party at the end of the week. It's people come out and bring picnic blankets, and some people BYOB or BYOP, they'll bring their own picnic. Some people opt to just buy directly from the vendors here or buy their food and drinks here. And then we've got the traditional farmers market offerings. We have produce vendors, and we have jewelry vendors and soap vendors, and all the things that you would expect to find at a farmer's market. And then of course we have the flower market here in the flower barn, where people can buy, we have pre-made bunches. We call them our market bunches. And then we have flowers by the stem where you can just buy, a zinnia or whatever. And then during the school year, it's on Saturday mornings from 9:30 to 12:30. So, yeah.
Okay, we got to check that out.
It's a lot of fun. We have a really good time.
Yeah, my wife and I have not been, so that's definitely in the plan now. We're gonna come check it out. So right now it's Friday nights, huh? Friday
nights.
evenings.
Yep.
Well, we gotta ask you. So you're here in Harlingen, serving the Valley. Sounds like you're born and raised, huh? Here in the
Not born but raised.
Oh, okay, okay, it counts.
Yep.
It counts.
Yep.
So we gotta ask you. Tell us one thing you love about the Rio Grande Valley. What do you love about home?
I love the culture. I love that it's this melting pot of English and Spanish and Mexican and American, and it's so unique unto itself. I love there's ads on TV, where you would only get it if you're from Valley, like if you get like the slang, right? The English and Spanish. I love where they mix those things. That part. And it's the Valley is such a friendly place. I traveled a lot when I was in college. And I had traveled all over Mexico growing up. My dad especially was convinced and was correct that it was so important for my sister and me to know and appreciate the Mexican culture because we live on the border, and to know the language. And so we spent a lot of time traveling in Mexico, and my sister and I were actually like unofficial exchange students in Mexico when I was in high school for a summer, which was so fun. So I got to know the culture and the language and the people very well. And then when I was in college, I got the chance to go to Europe, and I spent some time in England, which I also loved, but I was shocked at how, like, here in the Valley, here in Texas, or if you're in Mexico, if you say hi to someone on the street, it's very well received. It doesn't work like that. The whole world doesn't work like that. I remember being in England and saying hi to people on the street, and they were like suspicious, like what? Why are you asking me? Like, what? And here it's just accepted. I mean, I feel like people are it's a Texas thing, but it's also a Mexico thing, It's a very friendly, like open, outgoing culture, I think, by and large, like if I can generalize that. And I love that about the Valley. I feel like people want to be helpful and friendly and welcoming, and yeah.
That's nice. That's an amazing reason to love the Valley, because that's the exact culture that we feel here at Wild August. Yeah. It's very welcoming.
Thank you.
It's a beautiful place here. Miss Jennifer Wilson with Wild August Flowers and Flower Market and venue and whatever else is coming along the way, right? It's worth checking out. The arrangements, the flowers, just the atmosphere. I mean, we're not even at the market right now, and I'm already saying I love how it feels.
The market's a lot of fun. You need to come to a market.
Yeah, so that's one thing we got to put on our schedules. Let's check out the market at Wild August Fridays 6 to 9 right now, and then Saturday mornings the other times of the year. Yep. So it works out either way, right? You can either start your weekend here, or you can end your week.
Right? That's right.
So thank you so much for your time, Ms. Jennifer.
Welcome.
It's a beautiful area. We're so excited that we got to discover this place, and we've all gotten to know another amazing personality.
Thank you.
Locally grown, right? Here straight in Harlingen, Texas. So thanks for your time. We appreciate that. Beautiful area.
Well, I hope to see you guys at the market.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Don't forget to follow the show on social media for updates on episodes, interactive content, and more opportunities to grow together. We'll see you again next week on your podcast, the Rio Grande Podcast. Stay safe. Take care.